Sakuigar vode, and welcome to Cassus Café. I'm Ankin Cassus, and today I'm here joined with Captain.
Hello.
And Kalina.
Hi.
And unfortunately, Tykoth is out evading Trandoshan slavers this week, so he will be back with us again later. So today we are going to be reviewing episode 4 of season 3 of The Mandalorian. Right off the bat, pretty solid episode.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Much better than going to something completely unrelated.
This episode felt longer than the last one, even though it was like 20 minutes shorter.
I didn't feel that.
I think my first watch through it seemed longer than it was, but rewatching, for me, it always seems shorter the more I watch it.
Nah, it felt pretty short to me. But I think that's because, here's my first thing I wanted to talk about here, is that I felt like this episode was shorter because they took the first two scenes from what was supposed to be this episode and put them at the beginning and end of the previous episode. And that's why that one was an hour and this one was only like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, you think they cut the beginning of this episode and put it on the end of the...
Tacked it onto the beginning and end of that other episode that we had hypothesized could have originally been for the other show. What was it called?
Rangers of the New Republic?
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
I could buy that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it felt like the beginning and end of last episode could have easily been...
It would have fit so well at the beginning of this one.
Fit really well at the beginning of this episode.
And it would have made this episode be the normal 40 minutes of time that it normally is.
But if they did that, then, last episode would have been just Pershing, and everyone would have been so much more mad.
Well, yeah, I know that. But I think they originally had this episode be planned to have those at the beginning of it, but then they were like, oh, we need something to like tie this episode into The Mandalorian. Let's just take those scenes and put them here.
Yeah.
I could buy that, because I was actually thinking I didn't have a chance to watch it more than once, but even on my only time watching it, I was like, interesting. We went from 58 minutes down to 30-something minutes?
Yeah, and that's such a drastic change.
I was just like, man, they're really all over the place in terms of like time you need to watch an episode this season. I'm just like, when I go to watch next week, so I'm like, am I going to need half an hour? Am I going to need an hour? Am I going to need 45 minutes?
Yeah.
At least with television shows, it's pretty consistent.
I think the times being so different makes me a little bit more irritated with the issues of pacing, like we've talked about. Like this episode, there were definitely some times where I'm like, oh, I wish they took a little bit longer on this moment. They would have had the time.
And we'll get to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I agree.
It's not like you're going to make it, you're not formatting it to eventually go on like television either. You've been pretty like obvious with the way that the lengths are all over the place, that you have no intention to do it other than through your streaming service. So why do you have issues with pacing when you technically have all the time in the world?
When they could make something so much better by just having like some of these just landscape scenes, like they could have that in other times too. It's like adds 2 to 3 seconds to your episode, but like you don't have a time constraint if you already have the footage of it, or even if something easy to do, like why not just add it to make it better?
Right. You don't have...
When you don't have that time constraint.
Yeah, you don't have that restriction of like, well, a TV episode that goes on television on cable or satellite has to be 40-something minutes and X amount of seconds. You don't have that restriction. So it's not like you get this odd thing of like, well, I have to do this to get it to fit, right? You're not bound by that.
And you're not bound by making sure you have commercial breaks like they used to back in our day.
Right, and that's what I'm going back to, is that you don't have to deal with commercial breaks to make it fit within half an hour or an hour block, because there is no 45-minute shows on cable or satellite. It's either 30 or an hour, or it's in 30-minute blocks, is what I'm trying to say. So it's not like they were constricted, like, well, we had to cut some things to get it fit within the television broadcast.
Well, an episode of TV that were to air on TV will be between 42 and 43 minutes, because that extra 17 or 18 minutes that would be in that hour-long time block is commercials.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is that you're not bound by that restriction. So unlike when I watch shows that are also on television, it's either 20, 40, or hour and 20 minutes. Like, it's very easily, you can tell where the commercials are supposed to be and how that affects the length. Disney Plus shows seem to be all over the place. We have 38 minutes, then we have 58 minutes, and then the one episode, I think it was 31 minutes. So it's like, okay, so clearly you have no intention to put this on television because of that reason.
I think that's one of my biggest gripes about any of the Star Wars shows, except for Obi-Wan and Andor, because I'm pretty sure they stick to fairly rigid lengths for each episode. But most of them, like Mandalorian, all the Mandalorian episodes, Book of Boba Fett, it's basically the Dave Filoni stuff, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau stuff, that's been really just erratic in episode lengths, that I don't know why. I have no reason or no idea why they would do that.
Well,
why it has to be this way.
I don't care it being, a tad erratic, in the sense that, can I expect within reason a couple minutes, either an hour long or half an hour episode, right? Or 45 minutes, because you're not dealing with commercials, whatever. But I don't mind them having to take extra minutes when necessary if that's what it needs to make a good story. If the keyword is if you're making a good story, and there's some debate about some of these episodes whether that's what's happening, right? So
right. And I haven't done the math, but it looks like, so there's only about 26 minutes of actual show in this episode. Yeah.
Because of the credits?
That's insane.
Yeah, because the credits and the
intro?
The title stuff. So, like, the recaps.
Mm-hmm.
The recaps at the beginning and the credits. So there's only actually 26 minutes of new show this episode.
Wow.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, so getting into the meat of the episode, actually, we're probably gonna go more scene by scene this week than we did last week.
Well, it's relevant for once.
Yeah, I mean, this episode, it's really good. I enjoyed it a lot. I only have 3 big issues with it that we'll get to. The first one is it's not a big issue. This is like a tangent side little nitpick that's not one of my big 3. But it happens, and I didn't really notice this until it was pointed out to me in a different video that I watched. But it's kind of funny that the big intro shot of all the Mandalorians shooting and training and stuff is really cool, first of all. I really enjoyed seeing the Mandalorians training and brawling and just being Mandalorians, and it's really, really fun. But there's a fun little nitpick here if you're paying attention. There's 2 Mandalorians on the far left of the shot, around 126, 128-ish, that they're shooting out over the water, and as they're shooting out over the water, you can tell they're CGI because of their movements. They don't look CGI because when I was watching it, I didn't notice it until it was pointed out to me. But their movements are so rigid and not natural.
It looks like a Blender animation or something.
Right. Yeah, when I watch it back, it looks like it would be like a character in a video game type of movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super good CGI otherwise, though. Because I couldn't tell those guys weren't real until I looked at their movements. Because they still look good. It's pretty significant how good that CGI looks, except for, obviously, the movement.
Well, yeah, so it's funny because I was watching this, and I was scanning through all of it because I was just curious what they do. I don't know anything about Mandalorian, so I was like, oh, this new... I actually did see those guys shooting, and my first thought was like, well, what are you guys shooting at? Like, when that shot came up, and I was like, what are you guys shooting out over the water? Because I was like, it never showed a target. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, what are you guys doing?
I'm watching it through. I'm trying to see if there's any other person in this shot that kind of stands out as CGI to me, but I'm not really seeing anything.
I think it's maybe just those 2.
It could possibly be just those 2. The guys that are fighting with sticks behind them sort of look a little bit CGI, but a lot better movement than
I wouldn't be surprised if they recorded the people fighting on the far left and the far right elsewhere and then added them into the shot.
Yeah.
Like those people flying and falling over in the back on the right. I wouldn't be surprised if they recorded that like in a blue screen or green screen on mats and stuff, and then just add it in the background.
Well, yeah, but that's a little different because at the end of the day, it's still real footage. You're just manipulating it to fit. They did this with Top Gun Maverick. The Navy wouldn't allow them to fly planes next to each other. So they flew each individual plane and then CGI'd it into one shot. I could believe that's what they did here. And in a way, you can kind of see that might be the case based off how there's gaps between the groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably the most sloppy CGI shot of the whole show, but it still looks good.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not knocking it at all. I just thought that was funny, was pointed out to me, like, oh yeah, those guys are kind of,
funky.
Yeah, a little clunky.
Yeah, like the way they rotate, they don't even move their feet. It seems such an unnatural way to shoot. Especially when you're watching everyone else move. They're moving with their feet.
Yeah.
I will say, I think it's cute watching the Mandos and seeing how they teach the little younglings or foundlings.
Yep.
I think it's really cute to see just how they raise them, and I find it kind of odd that this main character or this main boy that he's much older. How old is he? Did they say?
No,
but he's like much older,
yeah.
And he just got his helmet. But then there's kids that look like they're like 7 with helmets on too. So I'm like, why did they wait so long to have him become a Mandalorian where these other kids are way younger and get their helmets?
Seemingly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're like a foot shorter than him, so.
There is a shot if you go to, I don't know, I think I'm around almost like 156. They're just shooting at nothing.
They're just like wasting ammunition into the water.
They're firing missiles and stuff into just nothing. I'm like, well, how is this making you a better fighter if you don't even know if you missed? If you're not even aiming at anything? Like, I could see it being like, oh, we're just testing the weapons to make sure they work. Like, that's a little different. You don't need to aim for anything.
Testing their weapon systems or something,
Right. But this doesn't look like what they're doing. They're trying to train. I'm like, what are you doing? So, yeah.
It is a little weird. It is a little weird. Sometimes.
Yeah, it seems silly to me.
Yeah.
Which I did feel like that when I was watching this on my only viewing was like, are you guys just shooting out over the water? Like, how's this helpful? But everyone else, it looks like actual training. Like, hey, these guys are fighting with knives. They're learning how to fight with knives. I'm like, oh, yeah, that could be useful. Yeah, I like the shot where the two guys decided to shoot the flamethrower at each other, and it, cancels out.
I don't know if that would really work in real life.
I think they'd both get burned.
Oh. Yeah, probably.
This is Star Wars, though, so
it's actually not as unfeasible as you think. So
I'd like to test
I'd like to see it.
No, I don't want to test it. I want to see someone
I'd like
else
to
test
see.
it.
Yeah, I might look up a video later to see if somebody tests that theory.
Well, the Mythbusters tested extinguisher versus a flamethrower, and they were able to cancel it out.
Really?
Yes.
I have to look at that. I don't remember that.
Now, granted, that's an extinguisher, but I think the idea is the same. It's the force of the flame that's behind it, that if they're equal, they should cancel out. That's why when I watched this shot, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty reasonable.
All right. So here's... it's funny. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me inherently just... I don't know, my viewpoints on the show and Mandalorians as a whole. And I really did enjoy the episode, I promise. But the next part is another issue that it's not even one of my main 3. So, but it's when we see Grogu.
With the rocks.
That part's cute.
I do have a critique about that. In the background, there's a Mandalorian next to Mando. It looks like a scripted, was it a game engine animation?
Let me see here.
Around 216, the guy on the left, the way he moves. Like, what are you doing?
You're right. You're right. It does kind of look a little video gamey, but it doesn't look fake.
It looks like one of those potential idle animations where a character, if he sits too long, will maybe make a, I'll look around kind of animation.
I think he's trying to fight somebody off screen, but
Let me see it
it's
again.
it's a little
There's multiple shots of it too happening.
Yeah.
I'm just like, feels kind of wonky.
he's like looking around too, like he's looking back and for no
like,
reason at all.
That's a repeat of the That's
And it is
repeating.
Yeah, the cut back to it, to the Grogu shot.
The background is repeating
of that guy's animation or acting or whatever. Yeah, it looks like he's getting beat up over there.
So that was definitely added in, whether it's CGI or just a video of him doing it. It was definitely added in afterwards, because you can see he's repeating the same movement and the same pattern of his movement from the first scene, the second clip, and then when it zooms out
it cuts
again.
back to him looking back like he did in that first shot, and then he goes on to the rest of his animation or whatever. That's neat. That's a good, very nitpicky observation.
We're not even 2 minutes in.
I only watched it once, and that's what I noticed. I was like, that's such an uncanny way to move around.
I was looking at Grogu, so I didn't
I know
notice.
you are, but I'm like, I look at the whole thing, so.
So what I was gonna get to before we cut off on that
Sidetrack.
was
Sorry.
Grogu being taken to train as a Mandalorian, and just something inside me, deep inside me, thinks this is sacrilegious. a Yoda species training as a Mandalorian just does not feel right to me in the slightest.
How are they gonna get a helmet for him? His ears won't fit.
They'll put holes in it for his ears to stick out.
But that's not most people's issue. Most people's issue is just him being a puppet this whole time, and the shots of him like jumping over the kid, it just felt weird because it's a puppet. I kind of agree. I mean, I don't really care too much about it.
I'd rather it be a puppet than CGI Yoda.
I agree.
I may not agree fully. Like when I think there's certain times then yes, he should be a puppet and it looks good, and the way the characters feed off of it being a puppet and actually there with them is good. I like the little cute things where he's standing down there and he's looking back up at Mando. I think that's adorable. But there's certain like stunts and action stuff that they still use the puppet for that I think would look better if it wasn't the puppet. Because like this whole jumping thing, let me try and
I wonder when they started using mainly the puppet, because I remember in season 1 they used CGI for quite a few scenes because they couldn't get him to walk, so every scene where he was walking he was CGI. But now they must have a puppet to do that, which obviously they've had time to create a puppet that can do all those things. But
and honestly, this show has proven to be really good with their CGI. Some of these things with Baby Yoda, Grogu, could be CGI and we'd not even know it, honestly.
I don't know. I could see the uncanny Mandalorians in the background.
I know, but sometimes just, the creatures, some of the subtle things they do with CGI, everything looks super good.
Yeah.
Well,
and
I don't 100% agree on that. There are some creatures I'm like, yeah, that looks really good, and some like, that screams CGI, and that screams bad CGI.
I haven't seen anything that screams bad CGI except for that Mandalorian couple in the beginning.
I'll get to my complaints when we get there.
Okay.
But let's focus on the lore part of this, or the actual context of the scene now.
Well, okay, so I'm kind of wondering what y'all are thinking, because we skipped it a little bit when he's doing his jumpy bit. It happened right before that when Mando picked him up, took him over there, and they're putting the thing on him, the dart shooter.
Yeah.
And Bo did it, and she's consoling him and stuff. What do you guys think Bo's motivation is here? She's acting super motherly.
Well, if you think about episode 2, when Grogu came back to get her to help him get back Mando, when she saw that it was Grogu and not Mando, her attitude completely changed immediately. So I think she has that more motherly side towards Grogu because she sees him as a kid. And she's always, at least this whole season, been like that, where she's more motherly and kind towards him than other people.
Yeah, I mean, she did push him away when they were in the mine. Well, not the mines, but the under parts of the city, the sewer area. To me, maybe, people can change, I mean, like I said, within the space of a couple hours, she discovered a creature that went from extinction to, oh my gosh, it's real, it's right in front of me, to I went from mocking Din Djarin's clan to I'm now in it. you know?
That's right. And this is still supposedly less than 24 hours after she saw that mythosaur. So she could be not quite in her right state of mind either at this moment. She's probably still thinking about that.
The other possibility, I mean, or it could have been a couple of days. I don't know. I don't think we've seen any implication that it's been less than that.
Well, there is a small indication we'll get to later that I think it's probably a very much shorter time than a couple of days. Okay. We'll get to it. Okay. Because it's later on in the episode.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But the point is that, she can still genuinely care about people. She was a fan of the Jedi. He is a Force user. I mean, I don't know about you, but if you're a Mandalorian, having a Force user on your side at this point in time in the galaxy, I think that's a pretty big deal. The Empire wiped most of them out.
Do any of you remember what her opinions were or her feelings were towards Grogu in the previous seasons? Because I honestly don't remember.
I don't think they had much of a connection. Okay. Right?
She saved him once before. When Din Djarin got stuck on that one boat, he got pulled out. And
that's right.
He was
He's like, but the kid's back there. And she's
right,
like, oh,
and she dived in, killed the creature that was down there, and saved him.
Yeah.
I remember that now. Okay.
So it's not like she has this new caredness for it. It's been around for a while. I think she's just generally a good person that cares about people.
Yeah.
And I think she cares and wants to protect Grogu because she does see him as a child still. And it's not like she has anything against him like she has against Din, where she was like really annoyed with him for whatever reason.
I was just trying to get you guys to ship Dinbo, okay?
Oh, you want him to be the father and her to be the mother?
Yeah.
I'll still ship it. I mean, I've been on that since 2 episodes ago.
I just thought that was neat. A neat little character moment between them, because she definitely felt like it was a little bit more of a motherly scenario at that time than usual, or the other times that she was with her.
Yeah, and I honestly felt like she was also. I felt like I was getting to see more of her in her normal self, not under these huge distress situations or major conflicts, right? This is just a day of training, and she's helping Grogu out. I kind of like that. I also liked how they called it training darts, and what they brought out was completely different than what my imagination went to.
So the kid chose, right, and he said darts, but when I first watched it, I heard guns, and I'm like, okay. And then they bring out these wrist launchers, and like, that's not a gun. What are they doing? So, but yeah, so second viewing and third viewing, I could hear him say darts because I know that's what he said now.
Yeah, I heard him say darts.
Funny. Yeah, it's funny. The first time I heard him, I thought I said guns.
I was imagining like darts on like a dartboard, right? And I was just like, okay, I don't know this weapon, but yeah, again, I really don't know Mandalorian weapons in general.
Dude,
so I was like,
freaking the Camino saber dart, same idea that Jango Fett had in Attack of the Clones.
It reminded me.
It shoots off your wrist.
It reminded me of Mando's nettle things.
The whistling
season.
birds.
The whistling birds.
Yeah, same idea.
I was thinking some kinetic launchers, but I was trying to say not a paintball gun.
Well, I mean, those are training ones. They shoot from the same kind of wrist launcher as the whistling birds would, or the Camino saber darts would. Any kind of darts shooting from your vambrace. So you said something about a lore thing?
Well, I know you're like not sure if you're okay with Grogu here training with the Mandalorians, but at the same time, I mean, at least in Disney lore, there was a Mandalorian Force user.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of precedence, at least. I know you don't like it.
It's so weird. That's not really my biggest issue. It is an issue, but it's not my biggest issue. It's just seeing a Yoda species doing it.
I mean,
it feels weird to me.
It does. It is a bit odd. I will grant you that. But at the same time, I think it's kind of neat.
I know, but it's like the only other major character of this species we know is Yoda. Yes, we have Yaddle, but she was in one episode or one movie, and that was it. And yeah, and so now the most significant one next to Yoda now in the live action is Grogu, and he's Force user just like Yoda and everything, but he's a Mandalorian, and I don't know how I feel about it. Actually, I do. I don't like it at all. But it's just strange. It's just really strange to me. I'm curious to see where they go with it, honestly, because I'm just curious as to why they chose this route with this character, because it's such a significant character, and they were talking about in season 1 how much of a pedestal this kind of character is on, and how much they had to respect this, species, and how much they had Lucas, in on it, kind of stuff.
I can kind of give you answer as to why. Basically, from what I've heard, the rumor is that he finished season 2 how he wanted, Grogu going away. Storyline ends there with that particular thing. He was going to do something else for season 3. Then Kathleen Kennedy supposedly stepped in and said, "Nope, you're bringing back Grogu. He has to be in this show."
Oh,
I would be so mad if that's true. So
That's
mad.
so frustrating.
It would make the most sense because Kathleen Kennedy just loves to sabotage
Yeah.
for the sake of whatever she likes, right? And
Yeah.
so apparently Favreau was like, "You know what? I'm going to go work on my other shows. Screw this. I'm out." Somebody else of higher up in the command chain came in and was like, "All right, what do I have to do to get you to come back?" And he was like, "All right, I'll come back, but I get control of this, not her. I have complete control going forward." So it might be one of those things that it's kind of like the sequel trilogies. He's got his hand dealt, and unfortunately Grogu being back is in his hand with him being a Mandalorian. Probably not what he had envisioned at all, but that's the hand that Kathleen Kennedy basically handed him, and he's got to deal with it.
Yeah, I've heard that one. Yeah, definitely. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in those kind of meetings to just figure out what's really happening behind the scenes there, because it's gotta
so
be
many-
a crapshoot.
Right? Like, how many things would make more sense if we knew that, right?
I just heard that they officially announced that Rian Johnson's trilogy is canceled, and I'm like, well, I've known that for years. They finally came out and officially said so, along with a few other movies that they announced that are actually canceled now. So it's just interesting that all those rumors about these movies that Kathleen Kennedy's been, in charge of and announced are canceled and have been canceled for a while, and then they finally come out just a little bit ago, shortly after, Bob Iger comes back, and announce that they're canceled. And I just think that's so ironic, so funny. I don't understand. Anyway, let's get back to topic here.
At least this scene is concerned.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me, but yet again, I'm not a diehard Mandalorian purist, so.
I am. All right. All right. So next scene, almost immediately after he wins, this dragon comes snatches the kid. This is one of my 3 major issues I have with this episode. I know I've been talking about all these issues I've had so far, but this is one of my main issues, and I hate being super negative because overall, yeah, I really did like this episode a lot. But I just felt like it was so sudden, and when I first watched it, it took me out of it.
So you're upset about pacing issues?
Yeah, I'm upset like how
We went from one thing to bam into another thing, right?
Exactly. We went from Grogu beating the kid, and they're like, ha 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 ha. And the kid walks off like he's gonna go sulk somewhere, and then immediately gets snatched up. There's no sulking, there's no little pause of the kid, kind of just kicking a rock or something, being sad. He just walks away and gets snatched up. There, he's like 2 feet from everyone else. How did he get snatched up? And no one else did.
So I have an issue with this scene for a completely different reason.
Yeah, go ahead.
So first, this kid almost gets eaten by a giant turtle alligator, and now he gets snatched by this thing.
Dude, this kid's had such a bad day.
I'm like, is this the most incompetent kid or what?
Or is I question then the Mandalorians, like, if you're on such a lethal planet of this caliber, why are you not better prepared? And they even say later, like, oh yeah, this has happened before. What?
Yeah.
This is not the first time this has happened?
And it always gets away.
Yeah, I'm like, what are you doing? Where's your defenses?
I'm curious. Okay, this is something else I heard from another video I watched, but I also kind of questioned myself when I was watching. Like, Bo-Katan, she followed it with her ship. Why didn't anyone else follow it with their ship? Because how if they don't have ships, how'd they get to the planet?
Clearly,
You know?
she is smarter than all the other Mandalorians because she's not brainwashed and a cult.
Maybe she's like the only
She's the only sensible, reasonable one.
the only adequate. I can't think of the real word for it.
Some thoughts for me were, I watched them like, they're like, oh, you can't use blasters because this will happen. I was like, yeah, that's pretty reasonable.
Kill the kid.
Right, so they're following it, and then they run out of jetpack fuel. I'm like, wait, that's a thing? You can run out of jetpack fuel in this
Of
universe?
course you can. Heck yeah.
I mean, yeah, in hindsight, it makes sense, but I've never seen it actually happen. Ever, If anything, I was like, maybe it's like a giant capacitor, right? You land and then it recharges.
I've seen jetpacks malfunction, but not run out of fuel yet.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they can't. This is the first time I've ever seen it happen on screen. So when they all ran out of jetpack fuel, and they're like, yeah, this always happens. I'm like, so wait, what? You're saying this happens multiple times, and the outcome is always the same. Do you guys not know what the definition of insanity is?
Yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, I had
I was thinking that's when Bo flew over, and I was just like, thank God,
like,
somebody with a brain.
Yeah, right. It's like, why doesn't anyone else with their ship go after it? I mean, I guess in fear that kill the kid. They can't use the ship to shoot it down or anything because they kill the kid or whoever it gets
Well, as
rid
far
of.
as we know, there are only two people who have a ship. Is Mando and Bo, right?
Yeah, but they'd obviously have to get there somehow. So who got them there? How'd they get there?
I'm guessing there's probably a large shuttle. Because how do you think she moves that forge around, right? She's not flying around in some fighter, right? It's got to be a decently sized ship. And
Like
she
a
keeps
freighter or
fighting.
something.
Right, and she has followers. I imagine they all get in some large-ish ship. And I imagine that it's probably tucked away. Because it seems obvious to me that they're still in hiding. They're trying not to draw attention to themselves. So they probably have it hidden in a cave somewhere that may or may not be easy to get out of. So I can understand them not using that. But at the same time, if this keeps happening, I would have started thinking about ways to try to deal with it, whether it be large anti-creature aircraft guns or a pursuit ship to at least track where the darn thing goes, because apparently it always outflies them, and then they're like, yeah, we never see them again. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. This is skipping forward a tad, but when we eventually get to the nest, you see that there is a Mandalorian helmet, like, in the nest.
Yeah.
But because the kid visors are bigger. This one was an adult visor, so it even takes the adults sometimes, not just the kids.
Yeah.
I think, well, maybe. I mean, I only saw the helmet, and I was like, that makes sense, because that's usually what all a foundling has, right? It's just their helmet. They got to earn everything else.
That's true. It could have been a younger one, but it had the normal helmet. It wasn't like a bigger visored helmet like the kids had.
It could have been like a young adult or, a teenager that just didn't never get the chance to actually try to earn the rest of his armor.
So sad.
But the point is, it's like, so wait, this has happened on multiple occasions, and you guys have done nothing to try to prevent this or improve your chances of rescuing somebody? What are y'all up to? Like,
this review of ours is so hypocritical because we've done nothing but critique the crap out of this episode, and guess what? I'm not done.
I love it.
And I like this episode a lot. That's all we can say is we like it.
Well, fun. A lot of my issues have been in the beginning of this episode.
Yeah,
it was the CGI and certain plot points.
And my next major issue, one of my 3, is right after this bit.
Oh no, what could that be?
So, if we're ready to move on.
Yeah.
So that he gets snatched by the thing, they chase him, they run out of fuel, blah, blah, blah. So they come back, and Bo comes back to tell them that she scouted the area. That's all good.
She flew at high altitude not to get the creature upset.
Yeah, all that was great. But when they're forming the plan, she's like showing them the mountains and whatnot. She's like, these are no higher than the peaks of Kirimorut. And if you've got to dive deep to know what Kirimorut is.
Honestly, I have no idea what that was. But I assume it was some sort of Mandalorian reference.
Yes. Yes. In Legends, it is basically the stronghold, conclave, whatever you want to call it, on Mandalore of Cal Scarata's clan. So Clan Scarata.
Ah.
And all his clones and people that he took in, like defecting clones and stuff like that he took in and
the ones that didn't follow Order 66.
Right, and hid them in Kirimura, his place on Mandalore. At least from my remembrance. And I'm fairly certain that's Cal's place on Mandalore. And I don't know if that's just a reference, that's a one-off reference to that, or if that's going to be coming in more important later. It's probably just a reference, honestly.
Right, it maybe just be a nod to the old lore.
Yeah, it could just be a nod, but it's also fricking it, because Kirimura, as far as I remember, didn't have mountains or peaks or anything like that. It was like enclave. So
once again, you're upset.
I'm upset.
John's getting upset.
Yeah. And that was my one of three. It was my second of my three major issues.
Well, that was not an issue for me, for obvious
I'm
reasons.
sure it wasn't, but so it wouldn't be an issue for most people unless they're me.
I do want to say that I found it interesting that because she knows where it went and she said this would be the best way to do it. You're like, all right, you're in charge of the Salt clan, and it's like, oh, okay. She's been in your clan for what, a day? And you trust her? I mean, that's somewhat respectable, right? I mean,
yeah.
If they honor the creed that hardcore,
they are so brainwashed.
Well, that's why I said respectable in a way, right? Like, if you truly follow your creed that hardcore, if anyone who, gets redeemed is now one of you once again, they're like, yeah, you have the skills. Why wouldn't you be in charge? So, like I said, it's kind of, in a way, I find it respectable, Yeah. And I actually kind of liked it, because the usual part for the course would be she would get in, she would try to help them and be like, well, you're new around here, we don't trust you yet, and have somebody else try to do it, then fail, and then she eventually would do it.
It is kind of a cool change of pace story-wise that they just accept her immediately, and she can be in a leadership role and help out. No one's like judging her. I think that's pretty neat.
It was a nice breath of fresh air to see that.
Yeah, that is a neat thing that they've done. But anyway,
moving on.
Maybe we can move on from that now. The whole Mando hunting party bit, and they're like gathering hunting party, small little band of Mandalorians to go hunt this creature. Top tier Mandalorian. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was what I wanted to see for a long time. Just Mandalorians going out on a hunt, and actually doing what they do and go hunt big animals. And this time they were trying to go hunt it to save somebody, but usually, they just go hunt them for sport stuff. It was really cool. And the cinematography during all that was phenomenal. Like them walking across the landscape and during the sunset and stuff. It looked very Seven Samurai-esque.
I liked the when they were in the ship and they were just going over where she tracked it to.
Yeah.
And she was just giving them information. She wasn't demanding be in charge of anything. Yep. She was just like, here's some useful information. You can do it this way because you don't want to get close to spook the creature because then it will kill the child. So she's like, based off what I found, I would recommend you do this. And the armorer is just like, all right, you're in charge. And it's like, oh, okay. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that they've just truly accepted her, because of what she done.
It is kind of neat that like Paz just lets this happen, because previously we thought Paz would have been like, I don't really like this chick, but he seems to be pretty okay with her in this episode. He doesn't have much qualms, and it's kind of weird because we later learn that the kid is his son,
right? Which I kind of suspected since the first episode.
But he doesn't take any kind of. Yep. Well, I wouldn't say that, but he's just not pushy.
I must lead. It's my son.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna lead. Excuse me. He's not like that.
Yeah. It's my son up there. I should be in charge.
Yeah, I think that was really interesting that he would let her lead it just like that. I don't know if they meant it to be like that in the sense of, oh, that's what his character would do, or if it's just they wanted to wait and have that payoff for him to say, that's my son, like a kind of twist.
Yeah, and I had honestly wondered if that was his son since the first episode, because the one moment where he almost got eaten by the crocodile turtle, you see he dived in the way to save him.
Oh, yeah. See, knowing that it is his son, I might have a different view of that scene now, because I didn't really know that until this episode.
Right, I didn't either, but I did notice that, and the way the camera is on him, in particular during the whole ceremony when he was getting his helmet, I was just getting the implication, like, I wonder if that's his son. Not directly stating it, but I was kind of getting that impression that might have been the case. And then to get that confirmation at the end of this episode, I know we're skipping ahead, but yes, like I was like, oh, I was right. That's cool.
Yeah. I think that and this episode in general makes me believe that I was kind of right in my speculation that maybe they will make Paz a more important character in the future. Yeah. And like they're kind of starting to develop him a little bit more. And like I said, it's because he's Paz Vizsla. He's like he's probably the only remaining family group from Clan Vizsla that we know of. And he's got a claim to the Mandalorian throne.
Which, with all things considered in the conflict, I think that I don't know how her clan and his clan got along, if not along at all. But, he seemed to be all right. Like, are you serious going to trust her? Like, none of that happened.
I know, which is weird because theoretically he should know who she is, but she might not necessarily know who he is because as far as we know, he hasn't really introduced himself to her.
Right.
She's well known because she used to rule Mandalore.
Right. And he even states that
her family
when she introduces herself.
Yeah. So it's interesting because she used to work with whoever Pre Vizsla is to him when she was in Death Watch, and then she split and she's became a Night Owl. I think she's the leader of the Night Owls. They split. She wasn't on friendly terms with Pre Vizsla at the end, if I recall. Maybe she was. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I was misremembering it. So basically, she was on good terms with Death Watch through the most of it, and Maul killing Pre Vizsla was the catalyst for her to split from the Mandalorians, quote, the Mandalorians, the Mandalorians that followed Maul, and she split from them and started fighting with the Jedi against Maul for Mandalore. Okay. So they probably were on good terms, but I don't really know what happened to Clan Vizsla between then and now because I don't think they were in Rebels at all.
I don't remember. Right. So.
I know Gar Saxon was. I know Sabine Wren, her family was. I know Bo-Katan and Kryze her clan was. But I don't think there was any Vizslas that I can remember. So it's interesting. So I don't know who Paz Vizsla is in relation to Pre.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it's also neat to see that because of the way they honor their code or whatever, that they can easily put those things aside if, like, hey, you did this incredible feat. Well, maybe not incredible feat, but you redeemed yourself, right? You did what was necessary to redeem yourself. We're on the same team.
Yeah.
The past is the past. We can go forward. Again, it's almost like goes back to what I was saying the other week. It's almost very much kind of reminds me of a Christian perspective on things. So, which again, I kind of like. It's such a different than the normal trope of, yeah, you may have done whatever, but we still don't trust you. Like, they're just like, all right, you're one of us.
One of the fold now, yeah.
Yes. Especially in this case, your skills are highly sought after for this mission. So, I like this scene.
So I think we can move on to the coup de grace of this episode, most people would probably say.
The Grogu and
the Grogu flashback, yeah.
I was not expecting this.
I was, because it sort of was spoiled.
Well, I do my best to avoid spoilers, because I want to enjoy wholeheartedly the experience of the episode, right?
The whole flashback, I didn't know what was going to happen in the flashback, but I knew that the flashback was going to happen in this episode because Carl Weathers took to Twitter before the episode aired and said, "Get ready for the youngling next week." And everyone's like, "Oh shoot, the youngling, that must mean Grogu, and we'll probably get the Grogu flashback." And everyone was right, because Carl Weathers blabbed, spilled the beans. Which is kind of funny, but all he did was release the title of the episode. Yeah. And everyone was like going nuts over it.
I completely.
It was
funny.
So I was expecting it, but I didn't know what was going to happen. So I was super like enthralled, and when it played, I was the first time I watched it, obviously loved seeing the clones again. And by the way, the clones are live action in this show. They're not CGI like in the prequels.
Okay, that explains why they feel a bit more real.
And I loved seeing Coruscant again, even though we just got it. I love seeing it like in Revenge of the Sith, and the temple on fire again, and all that stuff, and the gunships chasing the speeder bike. Oh my gosh, just the entire flashback. I loved it.
It gave me episode 2 vibes.
It gave me episode 3 vibes, because it was from episode 3.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
it made me feel, it reminded me of that scene where the assassin goes and tries to kill Padme,
they're
and
chasing,
they chase her
they're chasing
through the city.
Sam Wessel through the city. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that explains why I'm rewatching the scene. I'm like, yeah, it looks so good. Now I know why.
Yeah.
'Cause it's not CGI.
Yeah, well, I mean, the clones aren't, but yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. Particularly the clones.
Right.
Also, another thing to point out. Last time we saw the temple, it was early 2000s
Right.
CGI. So to see it with modern day CGI, I'm like, man,
It's just beautiful, dude.
The
Beautiful.
interior looks so good.
All of it. But I was a little underwhelmed when I found out who saved Grogu, because I didn't know who this character was. I knew who the actor was, and I thought that was fun, because that's Ahmed Best. He played Jar Jar Binks.
Oh.
Yeah. The guy that plays the Jedi that saves Grogu is Ahmed Best, and he played and voiced Jar Jar Binks.
So now he can be like, I played an awesome character too.
Yeah.
Well, supposedly,
yeah.
this character is actually from another
He's
show.
canon
It's
already.
like, so
He's got lore.
I looked it up. Apparently, this character is from some children's competition type real life show where he plays the host and the Jedi trainer that trains these kids in this like reality TV type show.
It's called a Jedi Temple Challenge or something like that.
And apparently it's on YouTube or some website. I need to look it up and watch it sometime, because I have not seen it.
Yeah,
but it sounds adorable. His character as the host in that show.
Okay, so what I guess it's kind of neat then that they had the guy that teaches kids comes and
Saving
rescues the kid.
Yeah. I think it was a little obscure, however, because most people like us, before we knew that, didn't know that show existed. And
that show's not even on Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's not even on Disney Plus.
I didn't know who this guy was at all.
I didn't either.
The whole time I was like, is this guy gonna die? Is this guy gonna die?
Yeah.
And then he survives.
I did think it was neat, because I knew initially when I saw it, I knew who the actor was, so I thought that was fun, but I didn't know who this character was. So I was expecting him to eat it, at some point, but he didn't, at least not yet. So I'm curious where
that's a pretty reasonable assumption. I mean, most of the Jedi did not survive this point in time.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious where that flashback's going to go from there, because obviously it's a cliffhanger again, so we should be able to get something else out of it later. But
I think I also just assumed that now that guy's taking him to that planet we saw him on at the very beginning.
I don't
of
know
the
about that. That would have been eons, 20 plus years before that happened.
Was it?
Yeah.
So he's 30.
Well, he would have been probably 20 years old during that time.
So it was 30 years before
Grogu.
current day.
Right. Yes. So before The Mandalorian started, it was approximately 30 years since Order 66. Yeah. Because 20 years till A New Hope. And then the whole trilogy, original trilogy, lasts about 5, 6, maybe close to 7. And then 5 years after that is
he's
Mandalorian
really
starts.
young.
So Grogu is 52-ish.
I do wonder, how does his pod move? Like, how does it know where to go? Is he controlling it? Are the other Jedis that are being killed off?
Yeah, he can.
There's a pair of joysticks in his pod that he uses.
Because like he's supposedly like an infant.
Yeah,
How is he controlling and following the
466.
guy in his pod?
He even looks younger in the flashbacks. I think they made a separate puppet because he's got a slightly bigger head, smaller ears, wider eyes.
Yeah, that's what I noticed too.
Wider eyes, wider than they already are. They're already so wide.
But they were wider in the flashback.
Yeah.
So in the flashback, seeing ultra high def Republic gunships made me giddy. I say this as somebody who owns the UCS gunship.
Hey, me too.
It's one of my favorite Clone Wars era vehicles. Yeah. To see it in ultra high def flying and to have like the searchlights on it, I was just like, man, I'm digging this, right?
It was so good, just so much fun.
Yeah,
took me right back into the prequels, and I loved every bit of it.
Yeah, and I will say, the guy driving the speeder bike who used the train against them, I was like, that's dirty, but I absolutely approve. That's just an ingenious way, right?
Yeah. So by the way, I don't know if I mentioned it, but the character's name is Kelleran Beck.
No, I did not know that was his name.
Yeah, so they mention it in the show. They just call him Kelleran. Get him to Kelleran. His full name's Kelleran Beck, and that's his character.
Yeah, I didn't even hear wholly what his name was in the beginning. So, like, yeah, I could maybe be a bit of a pacing thing of like, who is this guy? I don't know who it is. But yet again, it is a bit of a flashback.
I wouldn't say it's pacing. It's just like a shock. Like, we were expecting somebody more well-known to save Grogu. At least most people were. But like,
if we get another flashback in the future, though, I'm sure we're gonna find out more about him.
Yeah, maybe.
I hope so, because I know nothing about this dude.
Yeah, he's brand new to mainstream audiences. This is a brand new character.
What if they did this because now they want to make a real TV show based on him and Grogu, or just him during Order 66?
This is what happened in the 20 years after Order 66 with
Grogu.
This is
how they keep this is how they keep Grogu a baby forever. Just take him back.
I'm ready for Grogu to grow up and start being able to talk in like at least 2-word sentences.
Yeah.
Or 1 word. I'll be happy with a word.
I am Groot. No. I am Grogu.
Dang it.
But the thing is like the longer this scene dragged on, I was like, okay, apparently this guy is important. He's not going to die immediately like the Door Jedi that started this flashback.
Yeah,
you don't need to know a character that dies within 5 seconds.
He got his bad A moment.
Right. And I'm watching this and I'm like, okay, I don't know who this guy is. Apparently people know him because there's this Naboo-like ship that he gets to use to get away. And I'm like, okay, apparently this is a bit more of a major character than I thought, because I thought he was going to hand them off to those guys at the ship, and he was going to make like heroic Halo Reach style like ending, keeping the clones at bay while they got away. But they're like, no, you take the ship, we'll die instead. I'm like,
yeah, I was surprised at that.
Yeah, that was interesting. I didn't think about that until you mentioned it. Like, yeah, that's weird that Jedis are selfless and usually sacrifice themselves to protect others, but then he lets his little entourage take the heat while he gets out.
Yeah, his little entourage literally is like, you go, we'll stay. I'm like,
engines warm, get going. What?
I know. I was like, I think you could have all gotten on the ship. I think the shields on the ship could withstand blaster fire.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So yeah, it was just a little odd to me, that's all. Otherwise, I thought the whole flashback was kind of, like I said, I overall enjoyed the flashback. Seeing, I did find it interesting that they made a point that he flew by the rock again.
Yeah.
Like, the rock that they're like, this is the highest point in Coruscant. And then there's a part of this flashback.
Yeah.
And there's a small part of me goes, so did you give me a 40-minute filler just to point out what that rock was?
Just to give us some context for this rock.
I honestly felt that when that came up. Like,
that would be so funny if that's literally it. If that's all we get of Hershey.
We introduced a 40-minute story arc that's not relevant, just so you understood that rock.
So you understand this plaza and what this rock is. This fleeting 1 second scene.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, oh, that was a neat rock. Anyway.
So yeah, I think that's about it in regards to his flashback that I kind of wanted to highlight. The gunships, the rock, and we'll die, you go.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sure the ship could hold all of you, right?
Yeah, so when we get out of there, she gives him his little new circular pad.
Yeah, what is that?
It's just some...
It's a piece of Mandalorian.
just
Yeah,
emblem
it's
type
just a
thing?
tiny chest plate for him because he's tiny.
It has
It doesn't. It's not even the shape of a chest plate.
No, it's just a
must be why I was
circle because
confused.
it's his own little buckler shield that's strapped to his chest because that's all he can wear because he's a tiny little Yoda.
Man.
Not to mention that I think it also has the same symbol that's on Jin's shoulders.
Yeah, Din's, yeah. It's the Mudhorn, yeah.
Oh, the
Right,
Mudhorn.
Yeah, so in a way, it's kind of a way, just like a officially way to say, yes.
You are part of his clan,
you and him.
yeah.
Right, you are the same clan.
Yep. So we're back, so they go...
Ship
lands. The people walk out. Really good, like, amazingly good looking shots.
Oh yeah.
And then when they're camping, it's super cool. Just the whole vibe of, you know, Mando's camping together. But it's short-lived because then they go off and eat. And this is one of my 3 major issues with this episode. It's not as major as the other 2. It's a funny little thing. But it's one of my 3. And it is, how has Bo been eating this whole time? And is this her first meal since the Mythosaur? Because she asked, how does she eat?
And it's dinner time.
How does eat food?
Well, I guess that might go back to, I'm assuming that back where they are, they have private quarters, right? Or else no one would ever get anything done, right?
Well,
yeah.
either that
but...
or like, it's either this. All this happens the same day they both come back from being at the Living Waters.
Well, which is possible,
but even then,
the other part of me, is that these people have been here for a while, right? How else would you bathe and eat?
Yeah, but
you have to have some sort of private quarters,
right? It would make sense though for Bo to ask this question if this is her first time eating in a group, and it would be like the first day that they're there.
My point is that she could have been going back to her room.
But
I mean, I guess, but
and then eating, and then this is the first time she's had to eat with amongst a bunch of people, and that's why she leans over to Jin like, so how do you eat with around people? Like, because there's no private quarters.
Did she say how do you eat around people, or how do you eat with your helmet on?
How do you eat with other people?
How do you eat with other people?
Because I thought maybe she would be asking, like, how do you eat with your helmet on, or how do you eat with other people? Because she's like, oh, these people are like crazy and they never take their helmet off. Like, she might be thinking they never, ever, 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 ever take their helmet off, even when they're in private.
Well, Jin does.
That's not true.
Jin takes it off when he's in
'cause-
private.
Well, I think that might
Go
be
back
what
to
she's
season
thinking.
1.
Yeah.
She might be thinking that you never take your helmet off ever, because she doesn't know
Well,
what this crazy cult does. Like, how crazy are they?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know about you, but that would imply that she would think that, did they shower with their helmets on?
I mean, who knows? He went in the living waters with his helmet on.
He went in the living waters with his entire kit, dude.
Yeah.
That's a little different because he has to have it on, because as soon as he comes out, he'll be, you know, not redeemed again. So you have to go right back in. So it's a little different. But in turn, I'm trying to think of more like day-to-day activity.
She is
right?
joining this cult from the outside, and she doesn't really fully buy into it yet. So she's still trying to figure out what is the limit to this cult's craziness.
I wouldn't say she's still buying into it. I think she's just like, all right, how do I not break the rules?
Yeah.
So, because that would be me, right? Again, if you had your own quarters, because we've seen in season 1, he was at that village and they dropped food off. And basically, as soon as he's,
Yes,
you know,
we know that, but does Bo-Katan know that? That's the question.
I would imagine you would figure that part out. Now, I was thinking what she was thinking, because like there was a scene where Din drank the soup or whatever he had on Mandalore, and he kind of just barely moved his helmet up so he could drink something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I assume that's what she was wondering, if like
Maybe,
that's okay.
yeah, that makes sense.
I thought that was just kind of funny. Like, where's she been eating? Is this her first meal since the Mythos or whatever?
I thought it was all right, and I liked how Paz Vizsla was like, "No, you stay at the fire because you're what did he say?
You're the team lead.
You're the team. You're the leader of the war party.
You're the leader of the war party. You have the honor of staying by the fire." I'm impressed by this quite a bit. Especially coming from Paz, right?
Yeah, and knowing what we know now is that they're trying to save his son.
Right. The fact that he's like, "No, you're the war party. You stay. You have the honor."
She got the easy way out of her question earlier. She didn't have to go off anywhere. She got to stay put.
Almost in a way, though, it might be a bit stressful, right? She even looks around like, "Is everyone gone?
Yeah.
I don't want to get thrown out again." You know, that would be me, right? I'd be there taking my time eating. They're like,
what if people are done? They come back and she's got her helmet off and she's like, "Well, crap."
Right? Or is it like, do you just hear them just, "Are you done yet? Can I come back to the fire? It's kind of cold out here." Is that what they do?
It's like, all right, it's safe.
Right? That was like the one thought I had during this scene. But I thoroughly enjoyed this scene. This is like the scenes I like. Slowing down, taking the time to talk about some of this stuff, right? And this is the only time when I think we get to see her face this episode.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even say anything.
Yeah.
She just eats.
Hoot once
I
like a
love
brown
these
owl,
little
hoot
moments.
twice like a barn.
This entire episode, except for the flashback, they probably never even had to have boom mics on set or any mics at all because everything was ADR'd later.
Yeah, all the helmets and stuff. Yeah.
Man, that makes it a little bit easier on set, I feel.
Oh, it definitely is. So they climb up the thing.
The big mountain.
Yeah.
Climb up the mountain.
And then Paz Vizsla reminds everyone that
This is my son.
not to fire on the raptor because if so, it will kill the foundling if attacked.
He'll
So,
kill
which
my
makes sense,
baby.
knowing that's his son.
Yeah. And then I like how when we find out it's his son, he's like, "He's my son," and he like just tries to book it over there and
Falls for the
almost
walls, forgets everything he just told them.
Forgets reason.
forgets reason and logic and goes for it.
Now, I will
Almost
say I
dies.
did enjoy this episode 1 style of like climbing up the wall.
Yeah.
I like when there are creative ways to like, we can't use the jetpacks for this reason, right?
But we can.
Now you have a reason to create a scene of them climbing up the rocks. So I was like, this is good writing.
And
right?
having their grapple hooks actually useful.
Also, it just, this whole picturesque of them, like you can see out and beyond. It definitely reminds me if they like took the Grand Canyon and made that a whole biome.
Yeah, probably. That'd be cool.
Because that's what it looks like.
Yeah. I thought that this episode, and this season really in general, is doing a really good job. And I've mentioned it before, I think, but it's doing a really good job of making the sets and the settings feel bigger than they have in the past. Because when you shoot on the volume, the world seems a little small, and the set seems small. But this one, the sets are more grand. I can't wait till we get to them fighting the monster, because that's my favorite part
Then let's get there.
of the whole show. Or the whole episode.
Yeah, so we get to the part where they get up to the nest and we see one of the Mandalorian helmets and just the helmet.
Yep.
Which made me go, yep, you're at the right place. Again, a very subtle way to be like, yeah, this is it. You know? Also to confirm that this is not the first time that this has happened.
Yeah. And we kind of covered that earlier, how it's like a normal helmet and stuff. But yeah, this thing comes up. They find, those 3 babies.
The baddies.
Well, you're getting ahead. You know, Mando uses his heat thermal vision, which again, brilliance, right?
Yeah. Showing off the
Yeah,
tech.
he's like, I see a heat source over there. And Paz is just like, that must be my son. And I'm like, that seems pretty logical, but Bo-Katan's like, hey, we need to clear the area first. I'm like, yeah, that's probably a good idea. But Paz losing his patient is just like, no, he's my son. And it's like, oh, well, yep, there you go. Their emotion over reason. That would make sense. And then, start screaming his name, and no, it's not his son at all. It's 3 babies.
3 baby. I think they're called Shriek Hawks. Shriek Hawks.
Oh, okay.
Because they're apparently actually really important to Mandalorian lore. Disney lore anyway, because I've never heard of them before until now. But I did watch an Eckhart Slatter video. There's like a short that was talking about him. It's like apparently, and it's funny because I love his videos, the titles of his videos, because they're just funny. He's like, unfortunately, these horde creatures have lore. So he's talking about their shriek hawks. They're very important to Mandalorian lore culture. They are used as different emblems on armor and stuff, and you can see some in Clone Wars even. So I didn't even know that. I don't know if they're Legends or Disney or not, because I've never heard of them until now, but they could possibly be a deep Legends lore thing that I wasn't aware of.
Maybe. All I know is that they're ugly.
Yeah, they are pretty ugly. They look really good. The CGI in this scene in particular, when they're fighting it, is super good.
I'm not even at the fighting scene yet. I'm looking at that point where he regurgitates the foundling.
When I saw that, I'm like, wow, what?
Yeah, that was.
How's that kid alive?
Also, why is there not more slime on him?
Yeah.
Because it's Disney. They don't like that stuff.
This is a kid's show.
You can't kill the kid, even though you see one get regurgitated.
So that means the entire time this kid's been in this, potentially in the stomach, and the mom or whatever was waiting till this moment.
Well,
to get
it's like when a mama bird feeds its babies, they like swallow the worm and then they regurgitate it into the baby's mouth.
Yeah.
Yes, which is exactly what this is. What I'm saying is that parent waited a whole day,
That's
it seems
true.
like, to feed.
At least a whole night.
That's the part that, I'm like, that's kind of strange.
You think you'd feed him to him the night of.
Yeah.
Or kept him bound somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's a bird. It can't really bind him.
Just do it like the pterodactyls in Jurassic Park 3 and just drop them off at the nest.
Yeah,
have the babies
right?
have the babies do the dirty work.
Yeah, so Paz flies into the mouth to try to prevent, I guess, the foundling from being eaten again. Only for the bird to be like, ha, checkmate, I can eat you and take your son at the same time. And then proceeds to start flying off again. And I'm going, oh, here we go again. You're right back where you started the other day.
Now,
yeah.
This whole sequence is my favorite part of the show. It's just the cinematography, the pacing, the awesome shots of just the action is so well edited.
Yeah, and this creature looks really good. It doesn't scream CGI to me. I'm not sure if it was a puppet that they then placed in, or if they just took a really long time to do proper CGI work.
I think they spent all their CGI budget for this episode on this scene, because we had some CGI issues at the beginning. The first shot of this creature when it snatched the kid up wasn't as good as this, in my opinion. Like, during the scene, it's phenomenal.
It looks photorealistic.
Yeah.
It reminded me of when I first watched Jurassic Park, the original. Where they used a lot more practical effects, right? And so I was like, is this a practical effect? Like, if so, this is incredibly well done, and in props.
It looks just the same, tier of CGI as the Crate Dragon did. It's super good.
I agree. And so one of the scenes when they're fighting it, Bo starts falling, trying to save the kid.
Yeah.
And I noticed that piece of armor flew off. I'm like, that's a story item.
Yeah, I was like,
I know the way these people write. That's important.
That's just not going to be for the sake of we wanted to make it look like the Mandalorians are not bulletproof. I'm like, no, you're doing that that's a story item. And I was right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this whole sequence is just great. I love it. And Kleina's favorite part was the end where it gets snatched up by the alligator turtle thing.
Yeah, so I like that too. I like how they didn't even kill it per se. They just prevented it from flying some more, right?
I like how they had that creature from the very beginning of the first episode come back in this one and just big creature battles, fun.
It's very Jurassic World-esque.
to quote a very particular Jedi, there's always a bigger fish.
Yep. When I saw that scene and it come out, it's almost the exact same angle as when the Mosasaur comes out of the water in Jurassic World. Grabs the shark, but it's also when he grabs the T-Rex at the end, or not the T-Rex, the Indominus Rex.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was fun. And even though it's my favorite favorite part of the show, there is one slight question I have about it. They were complaining about not being able to keep up with it at the beginning of the show, but they were able to keep up with it now.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of like, so you could fly as fast now. Well, I guess maybe that might be, I don't know. I can't explain it. Maybe because they were a bit more prepared and they didn't have to go after it. They were right there and they could be like right behind it.
They weren't caught off guard, maybe.
Maybe they had their jetpacks tuned to afterburn. I mean, I don't know.
Oh man.
And,
Maybe it was slowed down some because it was carrying 2 things instead of 1.
Because here's the thing.
Maybe Kaz was slowing it down by flame throwing it or stuff. But they were able to put damage on it quicker than before, maybe. I guess you could kind of explain it.
Like I said, maybe they tuned their jetpacks to be a bit faster at the expense of more fuel burn, because Paz is sputtering to the cliff when he gets there. And he spent most of that trip being held by the freaking, whatever this thing is called.
Maybe when they were writing this episode...
Shriek Hawk, thank you. I forgot already.
Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe when they were writing this episode, they were just like, we need to have realistic jetpack expectations. And they just did the whole rest of the episode on that.
But yeah, they save the kid. They all come back, all cheery, good times. Kind of thought it was cute how they clapped with their van braces.
Yeah, I was like, okay, Mandalorian style, welcome. Right.
Yeah, it's a nice little added detail.
And Legends, the Mandalorians had a certain way of greeting, but I don't think that clapping with their van braces was the thing. But they would, when they did handshakes, they would clasp each other's forearms instead of their hands.
I can see that.
That was their handshakes. But then they walk out all goody, and then Bo-Katan's like, "Had brought you 3 more foundlings."
I know. I was like,
and when
what?
she said that, like, what? And then they brought out, like, oh, okay. They say they brought back the chicks.
Which this is where I was like, that looks really CGI to me when they walked out.
I don't know. I mean, a little bit. It's kind of, you do have to suspend a little bit of belief. Fitting 3 of those monstrosities inside that ship with everyone else in it.
They're cute, though.
I don't think the creatures themselves look bad.
Their eyes are adorable. Like, look at them. They look like naked mole rats, but naked bird dragons things.
It's not as bad as I thought it was when I first watched it.
Yeah.
I think the issue is that you got a lot of good stuff next to it.
Yeah.
And it just makes it a little bit more obvious that it's CGI, right? Versus
maybe.
They look really good, though.
Yeah, I think they look pretty good.
You can tell about the CGI, but they look really good.
Yeah, and I think initially I was probably being like, oh, that's clearly CGI, and it probably caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting 3 baby chicks to be walking out.
Yeah.
I thought they're like, oh, they found 3 more kids that were snatched in the nest. That was that's what I was thinking.
Now the next sequence we get now is the most important story bit of this episode, I in my opinion.
Well, they seem to be doing that with a lot of the
episodes. I know, they
lately.
just tack in what really drives the story forward right at the tail end of the episode.
So I want you to come back next week.
But it's super interesting because there's a few ways I guess you could take it. And I'm curious because what happens is she gets her pauldron replaced, and she asks for the mythosaur to be on it.
Before that, she said something about when it was being replaced. Something about technology of I can replace what's missing, but not with its modern refinements.
I wonder what that means. Maybe she just.
Hoping you could tell me.
Well, I'm thinking maybe it's just because they don't have access to the quality of Beskar that hers was originally in, or something like that. Because I don't know really what she meant by that. That's
Unless
my
this
theory.
goes back to or maybe it has to do with the whole living waters.
Maybe. I mean, it might not be the same quality of Beskar.
Could it be like part Beskar, part other metal?
It might not have. Maybe it might not have the right electronics that might be in it, because for some reason you always see her welding electronics on the pauldrons and pieces of armor.
Yeah, I don't get that.
I don't either.
The only thing I could think of is that maybe it's a way that it absorbs the energy.
It could be a
in a way.
built-in energy shield, because there has been technology like that in the past, but I don't know.
Well, I was thinking more of like she's making a way for the energy that the Beskar is absorbing to release without injuring the wearer.
Yeah.
Because if you were just put straight Beskar on there, it might not do you any good, right? I mean,
So they might not
what's
have
his face
access to that kind of technology. Maybe, I don't know.
Right, because like what's his face got shot by Mando when he just had the brick in his like chest piece or his chest pocket, and it knocked him out.
Yeah.
But then he woke up and the blaster didn't hit him actually. The Beskar absorbed it, but it kind of knocked him out cold, right?
Yeah.
Like he took the grunt of that blaster shot.
Yeah, because you see that there's no
there
technology
is no
inside
technology
of it.
on
It's
that
just
one,
the
yeah.
metal. I don't know.
So she's just placing this metal pauldron on her. She doesn't have any electronics on it like usual. So I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm curious what she meant by modern refinements.
I'm not sure about that. My important question here is, she reveals that she's seen the mythosaur. Do you believe?
Which I was not expecting.
Yeah, I was like, what are you telling her this? But do you think that the armorer actually believes her? Because I don't. I think she's just like, okay, yeah, whatever.
I think
that's fun. That's cool.
I think she's just like, okay there, Rob, and like doesn't actually, like, she just thinks that she's.
Well, at first she's like, oh, that's a noble vision.
Yeah, so she thinks she just saw it in her dreams kind of thing.
And then goes like, no, I saw it in real life.
And she's like, sure, hon.
Beneath the living waters on Mandalore. And then she says, when you choose to walk the way of Mandalore, you will see many things.
Yeah. And then she's like, but it was real. And then she was like, this is the way. And like, I don't think she actually believes she saw one.
I don't either.
Or she's saying something else. I kind of took it as, because you've been redeemed, you were able to see the mythosaur. That's kind of how I read it initially.
I don't know. I think that's a bit too mystical.
Maybe. I don't know. I think they made it really open-ended, so we really don't have a clear indication of one way or the other.
They really like to do that, don't they?
Yes. And based off the current track record, next week is going to be a pretty mad episode. 2 weeks to get an answer.
Probably, yeah. So that leads me into this meme that I wanted to share with you at this point. So I posted in the Discord. You can look at that.
I saw Mythosaur living one. Sure, let's go.
Yeah, I saw that and I thought it was hilarious. And I honestly, I don't think she believes her. So.
Yeah, and you might be right, but there's a part of me that wants to go, that could be true. But at the same time, it does show that Bo-Katan was not wholeheartedly trying to be like, I'm going to keep this and use this greedily. She was like, I'm going to try to tell the leader that it's real.
Which is,
there's a real one.
I think might be because of what she's been through and how she's gotten to know this sect of Mandalorians now. And she feels like she's, can trust them a bit more. But it's interesting that she tells the armorer first instead of like Din or somebody,
It doesn't surprise me because the armorer is not only the leader in a way, but the armorer is also like.
Well, they say that the armorer is like the person that keeps all the lore.
Yeah, she's the lore keeper.
Right.
Technically, Din should be later.
Yeah.
At the same time, she kind of keeps a lot of them in check sometimes, right? Yeah. How many times has Paz gotten upset and the armorer's like, nope, this is how things work. This is the way.
Yeah.
Well, she's built up to be like this person full of wisdom that she says in very cryptic ways, but it is effective and to a point that keeps people from doing these crazy things, at least.
So yeah, that's why I think it makes the most sense that she would talk to her, right? Not to mention that if anyone knows what would happen or what to do, probably be the armorer.
Well, yeah, the armorer is supposed to know the most about all this lore and the mythical creature and things like that. So if she's going to ask someone, she's the one that's going to know the most about it and be the most reliable source.
So she probably thinks they're all extinct now because they pretty much are.
Yeah.
Right, because it was like, what if I told you I saw a mythosaur? She's like, I say you'd be very lucky.
It's a noble vision. So I think she thinks she might have just seen one in a vision or a dream and not a real one.
Or like hallucinated it, and it was a...
Or maybe the living waters made her think she saw one.
Yeah.
I would be so mad if it's like fake.
Oh yeah, it needs to be real. It has to be
The mythosaur has to be real for me to like this show.
Yeah.
That would mean that the whole show would have been like a red herring.
Yeah.
Which means at the end of the season, instead of being satisfied, you feel cheated.
Yeah.
And I think Disney would be incredibly stupid and naive to pull such a thing.
Yeah.
Not saying they wouldn't, because they've done a lot of idiotic
Maybe it's
things.
just Jon Favreau trying to get back at them for making him have Grogu in the season.
Right, and I think that's actually a very solid possibility. This is probably more of Jon Favreau going, I need to regain what I want to do with the show. Let's dive more into Mandalorian culture. Let's bring in the mythosaur. Bunch of cool stuff. So
to take for granted that the mythosaur is real, it would lend itself to a cool kind of religious theme where the armor and these Mandalorians believe in this like religious style of Mandalore culture and stuff, and they revere the mythosaur. And there's this prophecy that the armor says either in season 2 or Book of Boba Fett. She says that what the prophecy says, something or whatever, that the mythosaur will rise and one will claim the throne and unite the clans and stuff like that, or the Mandalorians will rise again, sort of thing, when the mythosaur arises. And for them, that's probably just a metaphorical prophecy, like sort of like people think some biblical prophecies are just metaphors, but it's actually got a literal point to it, a literal tinge to it, so that the mythosaur is a real thing and can rise, and that could herald in a new dawn for Mandalore. And I think that's kind of a really interesting concept that I hope they dive into more in this season.
there is also the possibility, and here's the interesting thing about Mandalorians when they're always wearing their helmets, can't read their facial expressions, right? So for all we know, maybe the armor is just like going, yep, noble vision, wink wink, you're the one, you know, without, because at the same time, right, maybe she doesn't want to be like, well, you're the chosen one, right? And then that person goes off mad with power, right? So she may be trying to be a bit more subtle in how she's talking with Bo. So but again, it's hard to say when you can't read their facial expressions. So I'm really curious to see how it goes. I mean, this could be the armor playing 4D chess. I mean, because she knows that Jin has the dark saber, and then Bo's saying like, hey, I saw this creature that I'm pretty sure was supposed to be extinct. I'm highly certain that I saw it with my own two eyes. Maybe the armor is playing 4D chess here and trying to like get certain things to fall into place so that the prophecy gets fulfilled, right?
If she was, I would think that the armorer is trying to be like, you got to figure it out for yourself, Bo. I'm not going to tell you all the answers, even though I have them. You got to figure it out for yourself.
But obviously, you don't want to say that directly to their face.
Well, yeah.
Right? So she goes, well, it was a noble vision, you see it, but it's real. You know, and so she's very selective with her words. And I feel like that's the armorer in general. If you go back and watch the other seasons, she very rarely works that way in direct, right? I mean, when Dinge was like, but the mines are destroyed on Mandalore, and the armor's just like, this is the way. You know, I'm not going to tell you how to figure it out. I'm just telling you, you know, this is what you need to know. This is the way. This could be something similar in how she's talking to Bo.
Well,
so yeah, very excited for the next episode.
Yeah,
maybe, or maybe I'm excited for the 1 and 2 episodes.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. So to wrap up, it's been a very cool discussion. A lot of fun things in this episode. A lot of the first half was a lot of nitpicks, but that's okay.
Well, that's where most of the issues were.
If you're listening now, thank you for staying this long, and hopefully we didn't put you off the first half of the episode. So to wrap up, what are your guys' final thoughts on this episode?
Overall, I liked it. This felt like a classic Mandalorian episode, right? You start the episode, there's a issue that needs to be resolved, and we have it resolved at the end of the episode while we're still driving the overall seasonal plot. I wanted more of this at the beginning of the season, honestly. It kind of reminded more of classic season 1, season 2 Mandalorian. So I was very happy with it. It's not my favorite episode, but very solid episode.
Yep. Kleiner?
I enjoyed it. It was fun.
That's your mainstay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Captain for the most part. It's a good point that this is more along the lines of a typical like season 1 episode where the crisis gets resolved at the end and we're not left hanging really, but it does further the plot towards the end and it does make you want to see where things go.
I get a satisfaction at the end of the episode, and I'm still going like, so what's going on with Mythosaur and a bunch of other things.
Yeah, there's so many
this is
more.
What I like to see.
It's not even from this. A lot of my questions going forward is not even from this episode, honestly. It's from what we've gotten in episode 2 and 3.
Again, I think maybe the armor's playing 4D chess here. So again, it goes back to satisfaction that a small storyline was finished while still driving forward the relations that Bo-Katan has with this clan, the Watch.
I liked the episode a lot.
I liked being able to see all the Mandalorians together, like a whole group of them together at once rather than just one or two.
Like I said, I enjoyed the grander scale of the scenes in this episode. I liked the whole Mandalorians fighting and hunting and stuff like that. It was really, really good. You're probably right. I don't think it's probably my favorite episode. My favorite episode, I don't know. We'll have to wait. We'll see what our favorite episodes are at the end of the season. So, all right. So we're all done with final thoughts. Now, what are your predictions for next episode?
I have a prediction. Okay, what's Jar Jar Binks' character's name?
Kelleran Beck.
Okay,
The Jedi
so
guy?
I have a prediction that Kelleran Beck is going to be the focus of the next episode because, we keep having these good episode, not so great episode, good episode, not so great episode. So next episode is a not so great episode, obviously.
I would have preferred that over a Pershing episode.
And it's going to be an episode where it's a full flashback episode of just Kelleran Beck getting Grogu to his place and somehow making that story important to what's going on now.
All right, Cass.
See, that's a very logical choice. So that's therefore the incorrect
That's
answer.
true.
Because that's not how the seasons work. So,
Not this season.
yeah, so I'm going to go once and say IG-11 again. Eventually I'll be right eventually.
He's really hoping for that IG storyline.
So we're going to get this flashback and then it'll cut forward like 15 years to when IG-11 is programmed to go find the kid.
Good night. My prediction, oh man. I think we're gonna get some stuff that might be spoilers because there's I don't really want to talk about too much because there's still footage from the trailers we haven't seen yet.
What haven't we seen?
Which is interesting.
No, I don't want to hear.
I know. I'm not gonna go into specifics, but there's scenes that are in the trailers that we haven't seen yet. It's interesting that we're halfway through the season and we haven't seen those yet because usually they keep all that pretty much in the first half and we haven't seen it yet. So I'm thinking we'll probably see some stuff in the next episode that will be from the trailers.
But if you've looked at how they've edited this season so far with clipping stuff together, I don't think they had the whole season clipped out exactly how they wanted when they made that trailer. Just based on how we've seen these episodes clipped up.
I don't know. I think once the season was finalized and they released it, everything and made the trailers, everything was pretty much good
I
to go.
wouldn't put it past them to change stuff last minute.
Well, it
happens.
They might, but the problem with that is the scenes from the trailer are story specific, and we've already seen the setup for them. So I highly doubt that we're not going to see them. But I think we might see some of it, if not all of it, in the next episode, because it was kind of speculated that we might see it before Carter Weathers, blabbed his mouth on Twitter. It was speculated we might see the rest of those shots from the trailers in this episode, because, like I said, they usually keep all the trailer stuff in the first few episodes of the season, but that is not the case this time. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting, and I'll let you know if I'm right.
Sounds good.
All right, now final thing. What do you rate this episode 0 to 10? Kleina first, because she hates doing this.
I do hate it. I give it a thumbs up. I don't know, like an 8 or a 9.
8 or a 9? That's high praise.
Well, I like it. I like when
I know.
I like all the little kitties fighting each other at the beginning, and then I like the alligator monster eating the bird dragon monster thing.
Yeah,
it's fun. I like Bo-Katan. I like seeing her story. I want more of her.
Yeah,
that's really all this season makes me want, is I want more of Bo-Katan now.
To be honest, me too.
Which,
I really hate saying that.
Last
but
season,
she's the most intriguing character. We've said it before.
Last season, I did not care about her much at all. This season, I'm like all for her.
Like season 2, she felt more like a cameo, but she's just driving force in this season.
I have to echo the sentiments. I'm starting to be like a Bo-Katan fan. I'm really enjoying her presence in the series.
It makes me want to actually get her Black
Series
helmet.
I was just about to say that.
Because originally I was like, she's a Disney Clone Wars character, I don't care, but now I'm liking her in The Mandalorian, so I want her helmet now.
That's how consumerism works.
Yeah. All right, so Captain, your rating.
I'm thinking between a 6.5 to a 7. I consider it above average, but not anything majorly too spectacular.
Okay.
It's like what I wanted in terms of like a complete episode, but it's not like I have to consider what's come before it in terms of the Crate Dragon. That's still probably my top episode of a Mandalorian episode.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the bar I have to judge it by. And if that episode would be like a 10, then I can't give this like a super high praise number as comparison. So I probably have to give it a 7. It's above average. It's not an average episode, but in a way it is. Like, average in the sense that it has a complete story.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's not mind-blowing.
At this point in the season, I'm happy to have, right?
Yeah.
I say 7, but I don't mean 7 in a bad way. I mean 7 in like, yeah, this is a very good, solid, average episode. Yeah. Not every episode is going to be a 10.
Right.
But it's overall well shot, with the exception of some CGI.
So, yeah.
That gives it charm.
Yeah. So for me, I'll probably kind of split in the middle between you two. I'm gonna go 7.5 to 8. I enjoyed it a lot. It's very rewatchable to me. For me, the only other episode in this season so far that I would rewatch is the second one. So besides this one, so if I would rewatch it on my own and just to enjoy it, then that means it's pretty high up on my list. So yeah, I would give it probably 7.5 or 8.
I'm surprised that the Mandalorian purist is giving it a higher rating than me.
Yeah. Well, I'm very, I don't even know.
We're also coming off of a not so great episode, so it kind of skews the numbers a little bit.
It might just.
That is true. I think it was decently. I mean, yeah, there's some pacing issues at certain points.
But it's not nearly as bad as the pacing for the first episode.
No, that first episode pacing was all over the place.
Yeah, so like, yeah, it's not a bad episode, which is why I'm like, yeah, a solid 7.
Mm-hmm.
I think that first episode really just screwed the pacing for the rest of the season because I
want to know who's in charge of that.
The editor. And
or is
whoever
it
green lights the editing.
Well, that's the thing. Is there like, do they have like a director for every episode?
Yeah,
they have a different director for
I want
each
to look that up.
Carl Weathers directed this one, and Dave Filoni wrote it, I believe.
Yeah, I think it shows in the lack of consistency between the style of the episodes, which is not always a bad thing. There are certain shows that get away with it pretty well, and that diversity keeps it fresh. However, there is some level of consistency that you would want, and that comes from having a overall grand plan. They have some sort of plan here, but it does feel a little bit discombobulated.
So I looked it up. They're all different directors, but then Rick Famuyiwa, who directed the first episode, is also directing episodes 7 and 8. So I hope they get their pacing together by then.
Holy crap. The same guy that directed the first episode is directing the last 2?
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
so hopefully it gets better.
That's going to be interesting.
Hopefully it improves.
Yeah, we'll just have to see.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Here's hoping that next week will be equally interesting, but I'm not holding my breath based off the last the pace that's been set.
The trend setting.
I'm just hoping it'll be fun. As long as it's fun,
I wouldn't get your hopes up.
I'll be happy.
I mean, the last episode wasn't bad.
It just didn't fit.
It wasn't exciting either.
Anyway, yeah.
Underwhelming.
Anyway, thank you all for watching, and hope you enjoyed it. I hope you join us next week for episode 5. We're all very eager to find out what happens next. And hopefully we'll have Tykoth back. He was disposed or whatever this week. So hopefully we'll get him back. And I'm planning on maybe we'll get a small little video out with just me and him talking about this episode. So be on the lookout for that. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.